On the days after the full moon, we see the first movement of, oh, we need to change this here. We see the movement of the sun slipping into the next sign, and this actually happens
The 21st.
on the 21st in the evening here in Seattle. The sun moves into Sagittarius, and this definitely puts a different perspective onto life.
Yeah, every sign is a reaction to the sign before it. If Scorpio represents the intensification of going inward and going deep and really examining in the most pointed and profound way possible, Sagittarius is the escape from all of that. Sagittarius is a sign of the traveler, the sign of the adventurous mind, the sign of the seeker, is in some ways reacting to that inward turn of Scorpio with an external turn towards a wider, bigger sphere of experience.
Also the sign of the blind optimist.
Of Sagittarius. Yeah,
Everything's
Scorpio
okay.
is the sign of the blind pessimist. Well, yeah, I know I'm gorgeous, healthy, have $1 zillion, and have just been appointed as king of the universe and given immortality and a constant orgasmic state. But you know, there's something wrong here. I just know it. That would be the Scorpionic. There's still something missing. And Sagittarius, who has nothing. Hey, I'm doing great. How it's all good. It's all good.
It's all
But you don't
good.
have
It's
shit.
all-
That's fine. It's good. I'm getting better every day. That's Sagittarian. And the degree of BS we give in Sagittarius is related to the denial we experience during Scorpio. That if we don't face our stuff in Scorpio, then there's this sort of buildup and backlog and lump in the lower intestine that makes us run for far and distant places and bathrooms. And yet, if we do the deeper Scorpionic work of facing our fears and facing our desires and doing an assessment and cleaning up what we don't need, we're all light and ready to travel. And it's a lot easier to get on with carry-on baggage than actually having to check those 2 hippopotamuses that you bought foolishly.
One of the things that makes this year's movement of the sun from Scorpio into Sagittarius different than other years is this culprit right here, Neptune, which is a very slow-moving planet. It spends 14 years in each sign. It's in its second year of being in Pisces, and it's at 2 degrees of Pisces. And what that means is that as the sun moves into Sagittarius just a couple days later, when it hits 2 degrees of Sagittarius, it forms a 90-degree angle or a square to Neptune, which kind of is more dreamy, more fantasy-prone, more spiritual, more fuzzed out of reality than it normally is.
Yeah, it's interesting. A square, as we've said, is a challenging right angle, which represents drives or energies and characteristics that tend to be at cross purposes.
Except
with
when
one
Neptune's
another.
involved.
Exactly.
Just kidding.
Yeah, because Neptune's like Taibo blood. You know, it's universal. It goes everywhere. It's available to everyone. And so when you have a Neptune conflict, it's not usually that conflictual. The edges are blurred out by medication, meditation, or alcohol, or just denial. The other thing is that Sagittarius is ruled by or associated with Jupiter. So is Pisces in traditional astrology. Neptune now rules Pisces, so there's an expansive affinity between Sagittarius, the sun in Sagittarius, and the sun in Pisces. So even though it's confusing, cloudy, dreamy, and fantasy-oriented, it's not harsh.
No, it's not, except there are waves within waves, and as Jeff said, each sign is an answer to the sign before or in response. Well, in some ways we have that going here because we have the sun squaring Neptune on the 24th, and yet we also have the following day, but it's already close, we have Mercury conjuncting for the 3rd and final time Sirius Saturn. This is almost like standing in the tide, in the ocean, and the tide's, the tide's coming in. But as a big wave comes in, you can feel the undertow pulling you out. And so there's this diffusive, expansive energy from Neptune and from the sun in Sagittarius, this kind of optimistic, growth-oriented energy, and yet behind it, there's this last tug from Mercury's 2 prior conjunctions to Saturn on October 8th and October 29th, on the sun's conjunction to Saturn and on this eclipse that happened, or happens the beginning of November also. And so it's almost like as we expand outward, there's something we need to take care of, and we can't let it go. It's too obvious.
Yeah, the contrast is enormous because Sagittarius is far-reaching. The sun is the biggest thing in the solar system. Neptune is boundless. Pisces is boundless. So we've got this extraordinarily filled with faith or illusion aspect, and Mercury is detailed. Saturn is edgy, and Scorpio is condensed. We have this contrast between the tightest perceptions and the vaguest hopes. Negative side of this will be having a big dream that's snagged on some overlooked detail, or some tiny little negative that sort of knocks down this big illusion and dream. On the positive side, though, the bigger the dream, the more detailed we need to be to construct the vehicle that will take us to the desirable location.
And if we do it right, the payoff is right behind, because Mercury joins up with Saturn on the 25th, and as it begins to separate, right behind it we have Venus in Capricorn coming to an opposition with Jupiter. It's almost like the end of the month, there's tides of good news, hard news, expansion, contraction, and the Mercury-Saturn is a contraction, and the Venus opposing Jupiter, which is exact on the 28th, is certainly an expansive energy, and it's a relationship-oriented energy because it's opposition, and there's the sense of the good news coming behind perhaps the hard news. Maybe too much of it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that's Sagittarius after Scorpio as well. It's about, yes, life may be difficult. Yes, there may have been losses in the past, but we have the future to look forward to. That's what Sagittarius says to Scorpio.
Yeah, one other thing is that, the sun, which moves into Sagittarius every year around the 21st, this year does it on a Friday. Now, the reason why that's important is that in astrology, we can look at our holidays and see the holidays as a representative of the time of year or of the sign. And the holiday, like the holiday of Scorpio, is Halloween, where the veil is thin and the mysterious things are coming through from the depths. Well, the holiday of Sagittarius is Thanksgiving in the United States. And it's always celebrated on, and remember, Jupiter is the planet of Sagittarius. And Halloween is always on the first Jupiter's Day or Thor's Day.
Thanksgiving.
I'm sorry, thank you. Thanksgiving is always on the first Thursday after the sun moves into Sagittarius. And so, because the sun moved into Sagittarius on a Friday, this Thursday, the 28th, is as late typically as Thanksgiving in the month ever gets.
And Thursday is Jupiter's day.
Thor's
Rick said Thor. Well, Thor is the Nordic equivalent to Jupiter. Jeudi in French, Jueves in Spanish are Thursday. So it's quite interesting that we celebrate Thanksgiving, which is this day of feeling bountiful, on the first Jupiter's day in Sagittarius.
Right, and it's a day typically Sagittarian in as much as we focus on the uplifting and on the fellowship, and we came from across the seas to this place where we basically expanded our own fellowship. We were welcomed, with open arms by the natives, and we forget the fact that we killed them.
Yeah.
And this is typical Sagittarian blind optimism. It's like, it's all good.
And the other thing about Thanksgiving, and forgive me the non-Americans who are in the audience, or North Americans or watching the video, but it's a day of indulgence and overdoing, which is typical for expansive Jupiter. And Venus, the planet of pleasure, opposes Jupiter on Thanksgiving. That's a double day of indulgence.
And Mercury is also in the mix, forming sextiles and trines to both Venus and Jupiter, and so that even adds more of that sense of indulgence or expansion.
Yeah, so it's going to be an even more fattening than usual Thanksgiving. And those calories just burn away with gratitude. As long as the more gratitude you have, the the less calories you will be stuck with when the holidays.
And the moon goes, the month goes out with a bit of a bang, and quite an exciting one, because the sun forms a trine with Uranus on the 30th. And remember, Uranus is about sudden change, shock, surprise, awakening, lightning strikes, and we get an idea. The light bulb goes off. Wow, brain cells fire like lightning, neurons fire like lightning. And when the sun trines Uranus, this is a day of free thinking, of open thought, of ingenious ideas, of kapow. And it's kind of a cool ending to an otherwise rock and roll month. Well, one last thing I don't think we should quite finish, because I just want to point out that although it's next month, we're coming into a new moon. It's on December 2nd, and that new moon in Sagittarius really is like the final step of now we're in new times, or in the next phase of things.
All right, good job. Well, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Julie, our videographer. What we're going to do is take about a 10 to 15 minute break. We encourage you to patronize Soul Food. This is the way this wonderful cafe, bookstore, community center continues to thrive and serve all of us.
Yes, and I would also like to say one other thing, and that is that Jeff and I do an annual retreat weekend at a place that's a jewel of the Northwest. Brighton Bush Hot Springs is located in the old-growth forest about an hour east of Salem, Oregon. It's a magical place surrounded by national forest. It's a place that's off the grid. Cell phones do not work. Hair dryers do not work. They make their own electricity on a little dam on the river there. They serve 3 meals a day. Jeff and I do an annual look at the year ahead. The participants come on Friday, stay through Sunday. There's usually a group of about 20-ish people. We get to look at every chart in depth over the weekend, and we talk about the year ahead, not only for each of the individuals, but globally and socially, kind of like a macro version of what we do tonight in an hour. If you're interested, go to Brighton Bush, that's BREITEN, brightonbush.com. Check it out, and this will be our, 5th or 6th year?
Yeah.
It's a wonderful weekend, and we'd love to see you there. And thank you to Soul Food, and to Makia, and Kevin, and to all the wonderful baristas who are pumping coffee.
Join Rick Levine and Jeff Jower for their annual forecast seminar at beautiful Brighton Bush Hot Springs, Oregon, from January 10th through 12th next year. For details, go to brightonbush.com. That's BREITENBUSH.com. Join astrologers Jeff Jower, Alan Oken, Aaron Sullivan, and Lauren Albandian for the Wisdom of Astrology Conference from March 29th to April 4th, 2014 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. For details and registration, go to alanoken.com or click the link on the front page of stariq.com.